there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be making a potato/onion bin. So I'm sure you've seen them before in the country kitchen style. It's a bin or a little cupboard with 3 bins in it that hold your vegetables, sort of your carrots, your potatoes, your onions, that sort of thing. Things that don't necessarily need to be refrigerated, but you don't want them lying all over your kitchen. Bottom line is we're going to be using knotty pine for this project. I just think that the pine really lends itself to that country furniture look, and the knots I think are going to give it some character. Either way, you can choose whatever species you wish to use. I'm going with pine. And all of it will be 3/4 of an inch thick. And what we're going to start off with is the sides of the cabinet. Now the sides of the cabinet are actually going to be boards that are 11 inches wide. I don't have 11-inch wide pine, so we're going to start off with some 6-inch wide boards, and using a biscuit joiner we're going to laminate them together to give us 12-inch boards, and then of course we'll cut them down to our final size once they're dried up. I'd initially said we were going to rip the pieces to 6 inches and then trim them down to size, but the finished width of the boards for the side pieces of the carcass, they're going to be 11 inches wide, and I think they're 39 1/4 long, but 11 inches wide, so I'm going to correct that and rip the pieces at 5.5 inches, and then we're going to biscuit join and laminate. Before we get into the biscuits, we're just going to do some layout lines. These are as I said, these are the sides of the carcass, 11 inches wide now. They're temporarily clamped together. It's going to be 39 1/4 inches long, and I think we're going to put a dado or a biscuit 4 inches up from the bottom, and then every 8 inches from then on. So we're just going to mark those layout lines on here so that we can add our biscuits later on. You'll end up with better alignment of the biscuits if you put a square across and put your mark on both boards right away instead of trying to measure on separate boards. This way you know that they're going to line up no matter what. And as well, we're going to take a piece of chalk and we're going to mark these boards that they go together. So this board A and board A, we'll know then that these two will laminate together. So let's go ahead and do those biscuits, get some glue on here and clamp these up. Well, that's the one side glued up. So now I'm going to glue up the other side and put those aside to dry up. I'm not going to worry too much about the squeeze out right now. I'm going to let that tack up a little bit, probably for about half an hour or so, and then come along with a scraper and take the majority of it off. I just find that wiping it with a wet rag, although that method is acceptable as well, it makes too much of a mess. So we're going to do the old scraping method in about a half an hour. Well, the pieces for the side walls of this carcass are laminating up now and drying up. So the next thing that I want to work on is I need to get the lamination done for the back of this cabinet, let's say. So the same rough length, 39 1/4, 40 inches long. Leave yourself something to play with. But we need a piece that's 17 1/4 wide. So I'm going to rip a couple pieces of the pine at 8 5/8 and laminate them together so that we end up with our final dimension. I don't think we need a video of it, as you basically saw the process in the previous segment. So I'm going to do the lamination, and then we're going to carry on with the following step after that's done. Well, now it's a waiting game for the glue on these laminations to dry up. You should have your one piece, which is 17 1/4 wide by like 40, 42 long. Again, we're going to trim it, don't forget, so that second measurement isn't exactly crucial at this point in time. And you should have two pieces that are 11 inches wide by, again, 39, 40 inches long. I think the final dimension on these pieces as far as the length goes is 39 1/4. So you just want more than that. So two pieces 11 inches wide laminated, and of course the one piece for the back at 17 1/4 laminated. I want to head over to the bench with the sketch pad, and I'm going to show you where my train of thought is going with this sort of thing. Well, here we are at the bench with the old sketch pad, and we're going to have two 11-inch pieces. I'm not even sure how to draw this here, but this will be our 11-inch piece right here, and we're going to have another 11-inch piece just like this. These are the sides of the cabinets, and then this 16-inch piece will be here. Sorry, 17 1/4-inch piece. We eventually want this to be, I think it's 16 1/2, but for now it's 17 1/4. These are 11 inches wide. This is perspective. We're looking into the cabinet here. This is 3/4 inch pine, as well as these pieces here are 3/4 inch pine. And at the back, we're going to be putting a rabbet in each one of these side pieces here for the back to glue and fasten into. They're going to be 3/8 of an inch deep rabbets, so 3/8 on this side and 3/8 on this side. By the time that backboard is embedded in these side pieces, we're going to lose 3/4 of an inch on this, making the interior dimension 16 1/2 from the inside edge to the inside edge. That will be just the back frame carcass of our vegetable bin. Not much stability here to speak of, but there will be. There's a lot more to add to this particular build. The front of the cabinet out here consists of quite a few face frames on bins. And those face frames are constructed out of 3/4 inch thick pine, and it will be 2 inches wide. So any of the scrap offcuts that we removed from the initial pieces, we're going to take those over to the table saw right now, and we're going to rip them into 2-inch strips. Well, we've got the strips ripped at 2 inches, and what these strips are for, as I said, is the face frames of the bins for the vegetables. So while we're waiting, there's no reason that we can't cross-cut them to their proper dimensions. So at 2 inches wide and 3/4 inches thick, you're going to need 6 pieces that are 10 7/8 of an inch long, and you're going to need 6 pieces that are 14 7/8 of an inch long. So let's rip those, and might as well while we're waiting, and at least that stock then is cut. Well, as you saw, we've got those pieces cut to length, 6 of them at 10 7/8 and 6 of them at 14 7/8. And those will effectively make the face frames for our bins, for our vegetables. The 10 7/8 pieces are the uprights, and the 14 7/8 pieces are the cross beams. Now, instead of doing like butt joinery or something like that, we're going to do a mortise and tenon, which means that those 14 7/8 pieces for the horizontal part of the frame will have a 2-inch tenon on either end, and a matching 2-inch deep mortise will be on each one of the upright pieces. Gives it a lot more stability, and you know, it just makes it way more professional looking. I'm not sure if we're going to get into that just yet, but let's see what else we can move along while we're waiting for these panels to dry. Well, I was going to move on with some other steps of the project, but the more I think about it, the more I think I'd rather wait until the panels are dry, so that we can not be jumping all over the place and make this even more confusing than what it might already be for some of you guys. Just because I have it all in my head as to what it is that I want to do, you guys may not see that process. So I'm going to wait till my next shop visit to continue today's filming and today's show. Once the panels are dry, we can move on. I guess I'll see you when they're dry. Well, we're back and the panels are all dried up. I've got them unclamped, and the first thing that we're going to work on is I'm going to use a flush plane and a cabinet scraper to take out any irregularities between the joints of these laminated boards for the back and the 2 for the sides. Well, each one of the laminated boards is now scraped, and it could use a final sanding, but we're going to hold off for a while on that because there's more work to do. So what I'm going to do now is cut these boards to their final length, and that final length of all 3, that backer board and the 2 sides, is going to be 39 1/4 inches long. Now, put a crosscut blade in your table saw. There are some people that only use an all-purpose blade, and that's fine, it will cut, but you'll be amazed at the difference in the quality of work if you put in the proper blade for the proper operation, like a ripping blade, crosscut blade, etc., etc. So crosscut blade in the saw and cut them to 39 1/4 inches. Okay, the boards are cut to their final dimension, 39 1/4 inches long, and I think the next step that we're going to take will be putting that rabbet onto the side pieces to accept our back piece. And I don't know if you recall in an earlier segment, I said that this rabbet is going to be 3/4 of an inch wide and 3/8 of an inch deep. And it's going to be on the back side of our uprights, on the inside of the cabinet. I hope I didn't confuse you by saying that, but those will be the first cuts that we're going to do. So I'm going to get the dado blade installed in my table saw. If you're not sure how to do that, there is a tutorial here on the channel. Let's get that rabbet cut. Well, just before you change your setup and your fence of your table saw and your dado blade and all of that, just do a dry fit of the carcass of your cabinet just to make sure that all of your joinery here is where it should be. Make the adjustments where necessary, and then once you're happy with the dry fit, we can move on to the next step of the project. Well, we're at the bench with our side panels, and you can see our rabbets that are cut here. This surface that the rabbet was cut in, this is the inside of our carcass of our vegetable bin. So make sure you mark it as such with a pencil. You know, don't use chalk for this because you're going to be manhandling these boards and that is going to rub off. But mark the inside and also mark which way is up. I don't know if this is going to translate to the camera or not, but I'll darken it a little. Put an arrow on there, make sure you know which way is up, because what we're going to do with these side panels and the back panel is we now need to cut some dados along the side here that are going to accept the shelving sections of our cabinet or our carcass. There will be basically a floor section that each bin will rest on that will go at particular points along the side and back panels. So with that being said, you want to set your dado blade now for the thickness of your stock, being 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to show you where to mark and cut these dados for your shelves. Well, we've got the 3 boards, we've got the 2 sides and the back piece, and the dados are cut. The measurements to cut these dados are fairly simple. The first dado will start at 2 inches up from the bottom. That's why you want to mark that arrow pointing to the top so you know which side is the bottom. So 2 inches up, and then from the top edge of that first dado, space it out 11 inches. Cut another dado, and then from the top edge of that dado, you want to go another 11 inches to this dado. So in total, there will be 3 dados here, 2 inches up and 11 inches in between each of them. And that will suffice to hold the shelves. So in all 3 pieces, you want to duplicate those dados. So what we need now are the pieces for the shelves. And they're going to be 3/4 inch thick pine, just like everything else in the build. They need to be a dimension of 11 3/8 inch wide by 17 1/4 long. So we're going to cut those pieces and then start putting this carcass together. Well, here we have our shelf pieces that are 11 3/8 by 17 1/4, 3/4 of an inch thick. And now, before we do the assembly, out of each front corner of these shelves, we need to remove a little notch, 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch, right in the front section of each one of these shelves. At this point, you're going to want to do a dry fit. We've got the notches all cut in these shelf pieces here, and truth be told, I didn't have stock that was wide enough, so I have to add a couple of small strips in order to make it fit. But this is where you really want to get in there and do a test dry run of all of these joints to make sure that everything fits the way that you want it to. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm just going to dry fit this together, and if something doesn't fit right, you don't want to be messing around with glue to find out that something's not right. Now this piece here isn't fitting quite right, and I'm not sure why. Could be a little thicker piece of stock, I'm not sure. So that's something that we need to address before we glue this together. But do your dry fit, and if at all possible, get yourself a helper to help you put the rest of the carcass together. It's an extra set of hands can really be helpful with this sort of thing. So I'm just going to dry fit it. We know that this one section of the shelf up here isn't quite right, but I can deal with that. No big deal. That might be something as simple as a little bit of sanding. And then we'll just come down to this end here. A little awkward working on the floor, dealing with the camera, but we're okay. So there we go. And we'll just pull this together like that. And the carcass seems to fit together fairly well. I don't see any major issues at this point in time, other than this one piece here that doesn't fit quite right. A little confusing to me. Yeah, I think we're going to have to adjust that one. No problem. And now check your other pieces to make sure that they are going to fit as well. That's definitely a tight dado, so we're going to have to do some adjustments, and that's okay. That's why we do dry fits. So you don't need a video of me gluing this together, but when we come back, this thing should be in clamps, glued up, and just waiting to dry. Well, we've got the glue up done, but I'd like to make a correction notice. On my dry fit, and this is why we do them, I realized that the notches here in our front faces of our shelves don't accomplish what I wanted them to do. And the reason for that is I didn't allow for my dado in the side walls of the carcass. So it is still 3/4 of an inch deep, but you're going to have to cut them 1 1/8 wide to allow for this dado in the side walls. The reason for this is there's going to be a face frame that goes over top of the side pieces, and of course it needs to be a little inset. So there's not much we can do with this particular part of the build right now, so I guess we're kind of at a standstill. And that would be all the time that we have for this week's show. I think it's a good place to stop with the carcass completely assembled. There is one more little thing I'd like to tweak with it, but we'll deal with that on next week's show. Guys, one thing I want to tell you about this carcass is as well as having a helper to put it together, which is extremely beneficial, you want to make sure once it's all glued and clamped that before that glue sets, you get out a square and you want to check each shelf to the walls of the cabinet to make sure that they are all at 90 degrees. A square or off-kilter cabinet, or one that is racking at this point in time, is really going to cause you problems when you head to the next step of making the bins and the face frames, etc., etc. So guys, that's it for this week's show. And well, you know, there's some people that think they're too long anyway. So anyway, I'm going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video.